forth and we have to go back and forth.
There we go. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining our first ever virtual information session on this beautiful Saturday. Over where we are, it's a little bit hazy, but thank you for coming. I think that joining this call will be very beneficial for you. You'll learn about the grant process. We'll go over the application. I would say most times people who have joined the information session have done very well as far as scoring on their application. So thank you for coming. So let's get started. Next slide, Jackie. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. So we'll be going over the changes this year from last year. We'll go over the grant process. We'll go over the application overview, some tips to score high on the application, and some important dates, deadlines that you should remember. First off, okay, so this year we will be having applicants apply on Develop Online, so we are going 100%. Last year, as you recall, during my information session, I did talk about how we will be moving to Develop next year, which is this year, and that we had a total of 8 to 10 people who were on the pilot to help with the kinks and to iron things out with the system. So this year we are going 100% online. The benefits of that would be, you don't have to gather all of your papers, so we're going paperless. So you're gonna have to gather all your paper to mail it in or even email it in. No submitting your copy of your license. You don't have to submit your learning record like you have in the past, because Develop, it will have all of that information for us to verify. So for instance, your training hours, we'll be able to verify on Develop. And then your license will be able to, it talks with DHS's licensing lookup. For those of you who are a little hesitant, maybe because you're not very good with technology or don't have access to computers, we will have paper applications available, but it will be upon request. It will not be posted on our website, but it will be available for those who choose to go the paper route. And if you do go the paper route, we ask that you'll need to either email it in or drop it off at Think Small on Yorkton Avenue or Court in the white mailbox in front of the building, since we are closed due to COVID, or the offices are closed. The second change this year is the grant amount. So last year for family child care providers, you were able to request up to $1,000. Child care centers were able to request up to $2,500. This year it has increased. So family child care providers, you may request up to $2,000, and child care centers and school age programs are able to request up to $3,000 this year. So that's a good thing. 25% match. This will be great relief for centers as well as for us. We no longer will require for centers to do the 25% match and fill out the forms. So it's a win-win for both sides, because we don't have to review the form or make sure that you have the additional 25% match.
I do want to chime in quickly with the paper applications. So Charlene did mention that we're closed, and as of right now, we are working remotely at least until the end of the year. And so just know that if you do mail your application in, or if you drop it off at our Yorkton Court location, we won't be able to tell you right away if we received it or not. And so just because Charlene will have to make one trip after the application deadline. So it'll be towards the end of September. So just a quick note on that. So if you do have to complete it paper, probably scanning it in, or just getting it some way virtually or via computer to Charlene would be the best way to do that. we know it can be a challenge, and we totally understand. It's just, it's such a unique year. And so, yeah, but just a quick note on that.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Charlene Natsabong, and I am the grant administrator at Think Small. So just for those of you who are not familiar with me or who I am, besides the Child Care Services grant, I also administer the emergency grant and the startup grant. So if you have questions regarding those other two grants, feel free to contact me. Okay, so next slide. All right, training requirements. So the training requirement of 12 hours remains the same. However, the time frame of when the learning or the training that will count has been backdated to January 1st of 2020 through February 15th of 2021. So last year, the time frame was April 1st of the current year to February 15th of this year. So and that's because of COVID and trainings being canceled or not enough trainings for you to register. So DHS has decided, you know what, we'll allow you guys to go back as far as January 1st, 2020 to count your 12 hours towards the required training. Local priorities. As you know, in the past, it's always been 3 priorities that you had to requesting your items and explaining how those items would support the priorities. There were 3 last year. This year there will be 5 priorities, and each priority will fall under the 5 spending categories. So those of you who are part of Parent Aware, you'll be familiar with those 5 spending categories. They are the health and well-being, teaching and relationships, assessment of children, professionalism, and communications and relationships with families. But we'll go over that in detail as we move along. In the past, it was our grant committee who determined those priorities, and they did help this year. DHS sent them a list of priorities throughout the whole state, and they were to be able to help us pick their top priorities under each spending category, and then we submitted their top choices to DHS. And so now we have 5 priorities for everybody in the state, whereas before it was by region, and each region had a different priority. So this is the reason for this change is so that it'll be consistent across all regions for the priorities. The 6th change this year, in the past, we've said there are certain things that you are not able to request for because they are consumable or expendable items. So this year with COVID-19, the state is approving COVID-19 supplies. So things like PPE, mask, cleaning supplies. With cleaning supplies, they need to be supplies that would prevent the spread of the virus. So that's another change. Next slide, please. All right, did anyone have any questions about the changes this year? If not, we'll get into the next section here. Okay, so we'll go over the grant process. First of all, who can apply? So basically any child care programs who are actively providing early learning services from ages 0 to school age. You must be currently licensed with DHS or tribal government or legally licensed exempt. You must not have any current negative actions such as temporary immediate suspension, revocation, or maltreatment determination where you were found responsible. Parent Aware Building Quality, if you are currently part of that program, you are more than welcome to apply. So that's a different program. We have a question from, what was the question? It went away. Jackie, can you read the question again?
Yeah. All right. So the question is, under COVID cleaning supplies, can an air purifier be listed?
I would say that would be approved. What do you think, Jackie?
Yeah, so I think so too. Under like health and safety, right?
Yep.
More or less the changes that they are referring to are the consumable supplies, which would be your Clorox disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizer, definitely the PPE if you do wear those disposable masks, um, a UV sanitizer. Yeah, that would be approved.
Yep. So
Yeah.
anything touchless. So a touchless garbage can,
Mm-hmm.
a touchless sink,
Mm-hmm.
um, touchless soap dispenser. So anything that would prevent the spread. So right. So if you're not touching the faucet handle
Yeah.
or the garbage can or whatever, and you want to purchase something that's hand free, that's certainly going to help with the spreading of germs.
Yeah.
So
So definitely, and always feel free, to check in with us, just like you're doing now. If anything else comes up, I mean, always, let us know, and we can, if we don't know the answer to that, we can certainly ask DHS. But yes, the things that were mentioned, the UV sanitizer, uh, the cleaning
portable sink.
supplies. Yeah.
Yep, portable sink would be too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um,
Yes, I mean,
yeah.
definitely, we know and research shows that hand washing, consistent hand washing, um, is very effective in preventing the spread. So yes, definitely. And then another question, is parent-aware participation rating required to apply? The answer, Cassie, is no. You do not need to be parent-aware rated or even participating in parent-aware.
Mhm,
You do need to have a develop account. So regardless of whether or not you apply on develop, or if you're applying via paper application, you do need to have an active develop account.
mhm.
Um, but you
Yep,
don't need to be participating in Parent Aware.
yep. And those of you who are new to the grant, most of the items will be found on the application guide on pages 4 through 7 um, of items that are approved by DHS. Now, keep in mind that those items are just a guide. So if you don't see an item that you would like to request for, like Jackie said, feel free to reach out to Jackie or myself to find out if that is an approved item. Um, so, all right, so we talked about parent aware building quality. If you are part of that program, you can still apply because that is a different program. The fifth applied, if you've applied and received an award last year and in previous years, you are still welcome to apply this year. So there isn't a, you know, you can still apply. Next slide, please. So what kinds of things can my program purchase with the grant? Anything from toys to curriculum, professional development, anything to update your program, health and safety items, just like I said, the items that are listed on the application guide under the 5 spending categories on pages 4 through 8, I guess. Next slide. Okay, so we'll go into the 5 spending categories that I was talking about. So the first category is the health and well-being, and these are items that that you can request to help with the safety and health of your children, from alarm detectors to playground safety to healthy eating, emergency preparedness. Some programs have requested for an egress window or a fence, but those items would be considered items that you would need to be flagged by licensing before you can request for that. And the licensor would need to submit documentation, like a letter of recommendation saying that this is required by licensing for you to have an egress window added to, say, your downstairs basement, if or your fence if it's broken down or and you have the children playing outside and the fence is keeping them from going out into a busy street. That's something that they would mention in their letter of recommendation, that a fence is required. So that would be an example. The second spending category is the teaching and relationships with children. So again, these would be state-approved curriculum, most of the toys, games, classroom furniture, make sure that the furniture is early childhood furniture, supplies, and sorry, oops, learning activities for all ages. So that's the second second spending category.
We have a couple questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and address these in the group since others might have them as well. So the first question was, would a Bright Wheel app subscription be approved? The answer to that is yes. And that could either go under teaching and relationships or one of our later categories, which is, I think, family. We'll get to it. Sorry, I don't remember the name, but yes, the answer for the app is yes. Also, any e-learning. So there are, we know, those educational apps that are available now. And so yes, subscriptions to those are allowable. Another question that we have is, would a new fridge freezer for the basement be approved to store childcare, food, milk, and water? I don't believe so. So these are not, that's not allowable. So that would be a no. And then another one is, do you have to have an item in each category? And the answer to that is no, you do not need to have an item in each category. So you are definitely just applying for those items that you need. You know, we do have providers that it's maybe health and well-being, and then teaching and relationships, or maybe teaching and relationships and professionalism. So no, you do not need to put an item in each of the categories.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next slide. So the third spending category is the assessment and planning for each individual child. So basically, these are items that would help assess the growth of the children in your family. Fourth is the professionalism. This is where you would request for seminars, trainings, resources such as books, coursework. You can do a request for association fees under this category, but it's mainly to help yourself develop as a professional. The fifth category is the relationships with families. This is to help, so these are requests that would help you communicate with families and nurture the relationship between yourself and the families. So you can request for bulletin boards, family events, parent conferences. Some people in the past have requested for the app to be able to communicate to their families. We will pay for that as well, or reimburse that.
Sorry, a couple more questions. So there was a question about an iPad. You know, for distance learning, especially with all of that going on, the answer is yes. iPads are an allowable purchase. And then just, I don't know if I mentioned it in the beginning, but yes, so the full presentation, you know, we do know it's a lot of information, so it will be available. So we are recording it and it'll be available via our website sometime next week, so.
Yep, and I wanted to also add with the question about the iPad, there is a, with electronics, a cap on those. So there is a $500 cap on computers, electronics. With an iPad, you know, we would like for you to spend on other things besides 5 iPads. So there will be a limit as well. So 1 to 2 at the most for those types of things. And it would be each. So so if you request an iPad and a printer, say, those would be 2 different electronic items. So just as long as each electronic item does not exceed the $500 cap. And there is also a cap on $500 cap on furniture as well. So you want to make sure that the furniture is early childhood furniture and not adult furniture. We may request for a picture of what that furniture looks like, just to make sure that it is appropriate for this type of grant. Next slide, please.
There is another question that I'll bring out, and it says, I am planning to extend my daycare space to provide more space for social distancing. Would construction, the fees would they be approved? And, you know, unfortunately, so this grant is very strict as far as that goes. Um, and so it only covers like smaller improvements, which would be like paint or also
Yeah,
I'm
it,
flipping, like
it,
fencing, like if you need to repair a fence or those types
mhm,
of things or add a fence, but no major construction, and that would be most likely major construction.
mhm.
And then another question about upgrading your router and modem for distance learning. I believe a one-time like fee is
Setup
allowable, but
fee.
yeah, but if you, let's say you purchase a better router, that would be allowed, yes. Or in a modem, yes. So,
Yeah, there's another question. I was just excited up for a startup grant. So that is a good question. Um, if you have applied this fiscal year, so the fiscal year starts July 1st of 2020 to June 30th. If you have already applied and been awarded a startup grant, you will not be able to apply for this grant just because it is coming from the same funding bucket. Um, so to answer Sarah's question, you will not be able to apply for this grant. However, though, because you did apply for the startup grant, you won't be eligible again for that type of grant. So just know that this grant is available every single year. So even though you aren't able to apply this year, you will be able to apply next year because it's available annually September 1st.
yeah. And there is another question. Excuse me. It says repair on deck, like rotting wood, rotting railing. Yes, you can do that. Now, there are two different ways, right? So we can cover the materials only. So let's say if your spouse is handy or you're handy and you're just going to purchase the items and do it yourself, that's fine. We can cover the cost of the items and then no labor. Now, if you hire somebody to do it, they do need to be licensed and bonded, and that is the case with any state dollars. So it's, you just have to make sure you have somebody that is licensed and bonded if you're going to also ask that labor be reimbursed. But yes, the answer to that is yes. And then if I receive a peacetime emergency grant, can I apply for this one? Absolutely. Yes, the peacetime emergency grant was completely separate from this, and it was designed to help and provide some relief to our childcare providers. So yes, absolutely, you can apply for this grant.
So I just want to remind everyone that, and we will get into this as well, but the 5 priorities that the state has identified as a focus, you will have to explain the items that you're requesting for um, and show how it'll support those priorities. So some of these questions like the deck, if that you can work that into the one of the 5 priorities, because remember the grant committee will be reviewing that. So if it's not going to work into any the other priorities, you may not score high as far as requesting that item. Does that make sense? But we'll get into the priorities later on in the slides here. Next slide, please. What kinds of things can my program not purchase? So Jackie had mentioned major constructions or renovations, any religious-based curriculum, expendable or refillable supplies such as diapers, wipes, soaps, with the exception of the COVID-19 stuff that I had mentioned, and any overhead business costs for the program. And we've talked about minor construction renovations are allowed if it is required by licensing, documentation required. So that's a letter of a recommendation from your licensor. Next slide.
So there is another question.
Okay.
Has the requirement the grant money cannot be used for capital improvements changed, and no, so that hasn't changed. So yeah, that'll stay. And then another question, do you have to show expenses before applying for the grant? Not before applying, but you will have to purchase the items. And we'll get a little bit into that more, but you do have to, it is reimbursement based, and so you will have to purchase the items and we'll reimburse you.
Yeah.
And lastly,
Mhm.
there's another one that says, if I already purchased some of these items, will I be able to be reimbursed for these items under this grant, providing receipts? Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. Um, all expenses, if you're awarded a grant, all expenses must be dated November 1st and on. So yeah, unfortunately, any items you've already purchased, we're not allowed to reimburse for.
Yep. So I would think of it this way: if you don't have the money, you don't have the money to purchase, right? So um, November 1st is when you'll find out if you are awarded, and that's when you're granted the money. So if you've purchased your items beforehand, yeah, they are not eligible to be reimbursed because you haven't received the award yet. All right, good questions. All right, how much money will my program receive? The total award is dependent on funding received each year from the state and the program type. So whether you're a family child care or a child care center school age program. School age programs would fall under child care center. Again, award amount this year, family child care providers may request up to $2,000. Child care centers, school age programs up to $3,000. How is it determined if my program will receive funding? So first of all, you'll have to apply online on Develop, make sure that everything is complete to the best of your knowledge. Once you hit the submit button on Develop, the application will then be reviewed and scored by the grant committee online. So the way that it's scored, information that you provide online regarding your program, there are points tied to those questions answers that you provide. And then the second part is the subjective part, and that's where the grant committee will be reviewing the items that you are requesting for and how they support the priorities. And if you are able to write and support what you've requested, you'll score high there. The system Develop will then calculate both scores, and then the scores will be tabulated internally online. The highest score will be awarded first, down to the lowest until money runs out. Those who are not awarded will be placed on a wait list. How will my program receive the money if my program is awarded? So again, this grant is on a reimbursement basis, so you have to make the purchase first and then get reimbursed later. But there are requirements before you can get reimbursed. And the first one is to make sure that you have your 12 hours of training requirements in. Again, the training must have been taken between January 1st, 2020 through February 15th of 2021. So most of you may already have your hours in before you even apply or find out that you're awarded. So I would suggest going on Develop and looking at your learning record and going back January 1st of this year to and forward to see how many hours that you already have. And if you don't have enough, then I believe there are online trainings that are available for you to take to fulfill the remaining hours. We've talked about purchases must be made after your award date of November 1st. And then receipts and supporting documentation must be submitted by March 1st. That is the deadline for receipt submission. If my program is awarded, are there any requirements that I have to meet? Again, we talked about the training requirement. I would say this is the biggest requirement that I think is a challenge. Used to be, I think it's gotten much better because of the 12 hours and now that it's backdated to January 1st, I think that it'll be much easier to get those hours in. So 12 hours must be completed by, that should say March 15th, so that's a typo, February 15th, I'm sorry. It has to be MNCPD approved. For family child care providers, you can have your child care, your assistant or helper help with those training hours as long as the training hours are different and that they are listed on your provider license. So they must be on your provider license for them, for their hours to count. They certainly can take training outside of that, outside of the required, having it count towards the required training. Childcare centers, same with you. You can have your teachers and staff tag team to count those hours along, as long as, again, the trainings are different um, to get the 12 hours. So it's a total of 12 hours, not each staff member.
Right. And so yes, so we did have that question, right? It was about the 12 hours, Karen. And yes, so you can split them among your staff. There's another question of what if there's training that is not on develop?
Yeah, so what you want to do if the training isn't on develop, you want to go back to the trainer. They should know whether that training is MNCPD approved. So as long as it's MNCPD approved and the trainer is an approved trainer, then that training will be allowed. Now, the thing with having training outside of develop is that you want to make sure that the trainer submits your certificate, your training certificate to MNCPD so that it appears on your learning record. And that's our way of verifying that your training is completed. So we'll be looking at develop to make sure that it appears on your learning record.
Yeah.
If it's not on your learning record, it doesn't exist. So I want to make that clear. Please make sure that your training is on your learning record.
Yeah, and this is a DHS requirement. So you know, a lot of this stuff we don't have any wiggle room with. And so yeah, so this is a state requirement. And then as far as training goes, Maria, there's a question about, you know, what training are we talking about? This is just any training that you've taken. So if it's on your learning record in develop, then it counts. This could be, you know, SUIDs or abusive sorry, what is it? Any trauma or any, you know, first aid, CPR courses that you've taken. So there's nothing specific, just your general training. We just want to make sure that you are required to take 12 training hours. I hope this answers your question. So no specific, as long as it appears on your learning record, then you're good. And then there's another one that says, I have hours for working with Centennial School for ECFE. Is it a different type of training? And so again, you know, we just go back to it being in your learning record. So if it's on your learning record and it was taken during the dates, you know, beginning January 1st of this year, then it counts. So you'll be good. I hope that answers your question, Nicole. Otherwise, feel free to type back on the chat and then we can address it a little more.
Yeah, and Think Small has a professional development department that helps programs with a lot of the training questions. So if some of you are part of Parent Aware and Building Quality, I know that there are certain trainings that you have to take to meet the requirement that your coach and yourself has set. For this particular grant, as long as they are early childhood related trainings, it should be approved. Yeah, so next slide, please. So again, here are examples of MNCPD approved trainings. If you know that you've taken trainings from Think Small, Childcare Aware, Eager to Learn is an online training. Those are all MNCPD approved. And again, if you are taking trainings outside of what's mentioned there, you want to go back to the trainer to find out if if the training is MNCPD approved, and they should know. The cost of the required training is the provider's responsibility. You may choose to use the grant money to request for future training. So some providers, they may not have all their required training in, so you may request for training money to cover the training to help you fulfill the remaining hours that you have. Again, the timeline, excuse me, to take the training is January 1st, 2020 through February 15th of 2021. And again, it's so important, all trainings must be completed before reimbursement can take place. The second requirement is that programs must remain licensed for the next 2 years after the award date. If you are no longer active, you will be required to repay back the state. So if you know that in the next 2 years that you're not going to be doing childcare anymore, I would recommend not applying for this grant because you will have to pay the state back. And the third requirement is to maintain a membership in Develop. I think now with licensing, that is a requirement to take the trainings for licensing on Develop. So that should already be, a given. Okay, so any questions? Good questions, by the way. Any more questions regarding the grant process? Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't see any in the chat box. And again, so we'll open it up. So if you're not comfortable with the chat box, we'll open it up at the end, and we'll be able to kind of, I'm sorry.
Yep, we will go over that.
We'll go over it. So, and then Michelle, so you missed the first 2 slides. There are, so yes, there's 5. And then what we'll do with the priorities, we're going to post this online, and so you'll be able to kind of go back and revisit. But again, we'll address more questions.
Yep. So so the 5 priorities will be listed on the application guide, as well as, like Jackie said, we'll post it on our website. But it'll also be on the wish list, which some of you may have used or not used. It was not a requirement last year, but it was something that I had recommended to do because it really does help you organize your thought process before putting it on paper on your application. So we're going to do that again this year, and we'll cover this under this section right here, application submission on Develop. So so here is the Develop website. You all are familiar with this. Next slide, Jackie. So this is the home page. On the home page, you want to click on guides, and then oh, can you go back, Jackie? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so you'll want to click on guides, and then at the very bottom under user guides, you'll see grants. What was it? Just missed it. How to apply, I think. Apply, grants-apply. So you want to click on that, and there it is, grants, how to apply. So when you click on that, then the instructions will pop up, and just follow those instructions. We'll go with instructions now. I know that just going over the instructions now is, for me, it's easier to go through it online and then follow the instructions, but because it's not live yet, you're not able to do that. So hopefully, even though we go through the instructions, it'll help you trigger your memory once you do go online to apply some of the things that we discuss and talk about. All right, so first you need to log into your Develop profile with your email address and password. From the drop-down menu, then you want to choose your organization. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm going to address a couple questions
Oh,
quickly.
sure.
Um, so when will the application guide be available? And then can we apply prior to September 1st? So no, actually, so Develop will not let you apply prior to September 1st. And that's just something, again, DHS is monitoring. So they'll, it's automatic that it'll open up um, on September 1st. And so, no, the answer to that is no, you cannot apply prior to. The application guide, I believe everything will be available on September 1st, Charlene, correct?
The application guide, I can, if upon request, I can email it to you, but you just can't go online to apply. The application guide does have the wish list. So if you would like to get a head start as far as organizing your thoughts, it's on the very last page of the guide. So if you want a copy of the guide itself, I can certainly email it to you. But the actual application submission is not live until September 1st.
Yeah, and maybe we'll work with our marketing team to see if maybe we can just put the wish list online so that you can download um, that wish list, so that form, and maybe help you organize your thoughts. As far as receiving a startup grant, again, we no, you cannot. If it's within the same fiscal year, so if you were awarded a startup grant recently, you cannot apply for this grant. It's the same dollars. And then 20% off Kaplan. Yes, we're still doing 20% off Kaplan and 5% off Lakeshore. And we will be able to do that on our end as well. So you can submit a cart.
Yep, so for those of you who are, again, new to the grant process, those of you who have more of a challenge as far as spending money, we do offer the ordering items on your wish list through Kaplan and Lakeshore. So how that works is you'll go on to Kaplan or Lakeshore, create your shopping cart like you normally do, but then you would email me your cart. What I would do then is process the order for you. It'll be shipped to your home. Kaplan or Lakeshore will then invoice Think Small, and then we will pay it against your grant. So you don't have to pay, you won't have any upfront costs. So that's an option for those who have a little more challenge as far as spending money upfront. Some programs will do a little bit of both. Some will do most of their purchases as part of the order and then maybe spend $200 and get reimbursed for that. So you can do a little bit of each.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and that, we know, I mean, definitely this year, COVID has greatly impacted a lot of our childcare programs, and we know that. And so, yes, that option is there. And if you can't or prefer not to front the cost for it, then yes, submitting a cart is the way to go. We are limited to just Kaplan and Lakeshore, so those are the only two stores we're able to purchase items from on your behalf. But yeah, so like Charlene says, there are programs that definitely do a little bit of both to help with that financial burden.
Yeah, and one more store would be the Red Leaf Press. So you can order books through them. You'll get 20%. And then depending on, well, you can't pick up, so there will be shipping fee on top of that. But you'll get 20% off with Red Leaf as well, and it'll be paid against your grant. So those three. Good questions. All right, should we go on to the next slide? Okay, so after you log in, it'll take you to this this page. So there are 7 tabs. You'll want to click on the quality tab and then hit apply. And at the bottom of the page, you'll scroll down, you'll look for the Child Care Aware Regional Grants, and then click on apply. When you click on apply, this is eYours Misfits, it looks like. So you'll have to go through a series of tabs. The first tab is contact information. So basically providing your contact information, your email address, first, last name, and phone number, and then you want to hit next bottom corner. Your ID number. So here you just want to verify that your org ID is correct, and then click continue. If you have any accreditation that you would like to enter, if you don't have it, this is where you would enter your accreditation. I believe if you've already entered some in, you'll just verify that your information is correct and then hit next. This tab is your program enrollment. So this is basically information about your program as far as how many classrooms you have. For family childcare, you can either put 0 or 1, and then the total numbers of children enrolled. So you have by age groups. So you have infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school age, and then on this other side, high needs. If you have any high needs kids in any of the school age or the age programs or the age, then you would want to put the number of kids within that age group here. And then the second section is the race of children enrolled. I would estimate or guess, if you're not sure if they belong to one of the groups that you can put there.
Yes.
The number of people.
Also, I do, so Charlene did mention, but so last year we had some issues with leaving it blank, and so you may have to add a 0 on there in order for it to accept it. For some reason, it was, we don't know if that's changed this year, probably not. So if it's, you know, if it's left blank, you'll probably need to add a 0 there. And then the percentage, it will do the math for you. So you won't have to figure percentages out. Once you enter a number, it'll do the percentages automatically.
Yep, good
and
point.
then is a health issue for a child a high needs? Yes. Yes, that is considered. And then do we put the age of children now or after November 1st? Yeah, so if you know, there's a child that's kind of transitioning from infant to toddler or from toddler to preschooler, you'll do whatever you have at the time of application. So it's when you're applying. And are extreme nut allergies considered high needs? I believe so. So as long as you have a plan, you know, for any child that you need to have a plan for, yes, that would be a high needs child. So yes.
Yeah, so under high needs also includes kids who have reduced lunch at school, low income, and then some of the other examples that providers have asked. It'll also mention on the application guide as well what is considered high needs. So, so as I would recommend, I know it's a lot of reading and a lot of verbiage, but I would recommend just going through the application guide since the application is not yet available, just to familiarize yourself again with the grant. A lot of what is on the application guide is really what I'm going through now. So
yes, and quickly, so here's what I'll do. So I can kind of see, it says on here where it says program enrollment and it talks about high needs.
Yep.
But I'll just read it quickly since it's a little hard to see. And it says, so any children, high needs meets one or more of the following criteria, which is children from low-income families that are at or below 200% poverty rate or otherwise in need of special assistance and support, including children with disabilities or developmental delays, children who are English language learners, and children who reside on what are considered to be Indian lands, who are migrant, homeless, or in foster care.
Okay, so here is where you would check what kind of programming your program has, so as far as what you offer. So I would say most programs who have offer daycare Monday through Friday would select full week and that's 5 or more days per week. So you would select all that would apply to your program. So Monday through Friday, standard hours would be full week, 5 or more, full day, 5 or more hours. If some of you offer hours beyond the 5 days, then you would select weekend, Saturday, and Sunday. If you are part-time, then you would do the part day, part week. And then when is your program open and serving children? This drop-down would be either full calendar year, or I believe there is an option for you to choose if you offer your program just during the school year. So I think there is an option where you can pick school year only, and then for programs who have sometimes the summer off, and then pick up again during the school year. At the bottom, it says if your program closes and is not serving children for 2 or more consecutive weeks at any time during the year, please describe below when your program is closed. Please be specific as possible. So this would be, say you take vacation for a week or two, that's fine. But if you miss more than 2 weeks, you'll want to explain why you were closed for more than 2 weeks. Because typically, when employers go on vacation, right, or you go on vacation, it's mainly 1 or 2 weeks. So anything beyond that, they just want to know why you were closed for that long, for more than 2 weeks. And then you want to hit next, lower right corner.
I have a couple of questions here. So would an autoimmune disease be high needs? Yes. And then do we need to spend money on multicultural? And the answer to that is yes. We'll talk a little bit more about it too, but yes. And I do want to let folks know, you know, DHS is very strict with that. They're getting more and more strict each year. It does specifically apply or refer to like multiracial, multi-ethnic. You know, sometimes we have programs that would buy stuff for different abilities, and that's not allowable, unfortunately. It has to be specific to different races, different cultures, and such. And then then we have a question about closures for distance learning. Karen, I'm not sure, maybe, okay, let's see here. Yeah, so I'm not sure specifically what you're asking, if your program is closed or.
Are you asking if
Yeah.
you're eligible to apply if your program is closed?
Here, let me unmute you, Karen. Or actually, you're able to unmute yourself. Or here we go. Let's see. Okay, Karen, you're unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question was more about the closure box on the develop page.
Okay.
So if the state shuts down and my preschool decides to only provide distance learning, we are still working, but the kids can't come. Is that considered a closure? Is that not really a closure?
Not a closure, yeah. So you still have. So that would be, let's say, you know, if it's a school district type thing, if you're part of the district, you're still open and providing services. Okay. So yes, okay. You are still open.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. And then another question here, Michelle, can we hire someone to teach Spanish 1 time per week as part of multicultural aspect of the grant? Yeah, so we do have folks that contract, for example, even for other stuff, like for example, we have somebody that they have somebody that comes to talk about nutrition, and so they ask for reimbursement for that. So yes, the answer for that would be yes. And then is STEMs a focus this year? I don't know. So probably referring to
the priorities.
The priorities. And
we'll go over the priorities.
Yeah, we'll go and talk a little bit more about that. And then Air purifier, Tamara, yes, an air purifier is an allowable expense.
Okay, so the next tab is your address tab. So pretty self-explanatory. You'll just enter in your address, organization address, physical address, and mailing address. Next slide. I believe if your physical address is the same as your mailing address, just click on that box right here and it'll auto-populate. Otherwise, if your mailing address is different from your organization address, then you'd want to fill that in. And that's if some family providers will have a separate place where they hold their daycare. So their home address, which is their mailing address, would be different from their organization address. So that's where that would be put into play. Otherwise, most times, family child care providers will have their home as their place of, daycare. So it'd be the same as the physical. Looks like this text box here is for any additional information about your organization that you would like to appear here, and that's where you would type that in and then click next. Okay. Jackie, do we have any more questions?
Sorry, I had to mute myself here. So there's someone that's asking about where to find a qualified teacher. You know, that's a really great question. And the answer to that is I don't know.
You might want to refer to other colleagues, other daycare
yeah.
providers in your area, and ask if any of them has reached out to a Spanish teacher to come and teach at their daycare.
Yeah, that's probably that's probably going to be your best bet. You know, talking to other providers, other programs, and seeing if they're able to provide a reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so this wish list, this is found on the very back page of the application guide. This is the wish list that I said, you know, I would strongly recommend filling this out to help you organize your thoughts, because all you have to do is copy and paste the information that you complete on this form to your application online. So the wish list has the priorities that we talked about, the 5 priorities under each spending category. So the first priority is the health and well-being, and the priority for that is equipment and activities that promote health and fitness in your program. So I'm not going to read all of it, but those are your 5 spending categories. And it's listed on the top of the wish list. So you'll be able to refer to the priorities as you are completing the form. Okay, so this is an example of a completed one. You have your items, your item column, price, category, priority, the goal, and multicultural. The item, I like to call it the what. So what is it that you are requesting for? The goal is the how is it going to support the priority that as a focus. So in this example, the first example, the provider has requested, and what I would like for you all to do is in the very first, as the very first item, I would like for you to list your multicultural so that you don't forget. So if you are a family child care provider, I choose your $200, because remember it's 10% of your total award that you are requesting, and put that in the first line so that you know that that's already in, because it is a requirement. Same for child care centers and school age, $300 worth of multicultural. So here, EOR Misfits, they are requesting for Exploring Other Countries photo book series. Cost of that is $90. And then they are also requesting for Lakeshore Multicultural Clothing Set for $229. Under the price column, then that you'll want to add up the cost of each of the items in parentheses, and that total is incorrect. So that's a typo. So so the total would be what, 90 plus 229, 319 is really what the price should be under price column. Now the category is usually one of the 5 categories, but because this is a requirement, we put requirement as the category. It supports priority number 3 under, so you'll have to refer back to the priorities page. And then the goal is your how. How is it going to support the priority number 3? Jackie, can we go back to the priorities page? Just so they see, okay, so priority number 3 is teaching and relationships with children, materials, activities, strategies, assessment, and curriculum development to promote social, emotional, physical, and intellectual development of all children. So, so the multicultural would fall under this priority. And then we can go back to the form. So Eeyore says, the Exploring Other Countries book will help the kids discover fascinating countries in the world. The multicultural clothing set will allow my children to experience clothing from cultures around the world. So the what is the Exploring the Countries book. The how is it will help discover fascinating countries in the world. The multicultural, the how is it will allow my children to experience clothing from other parts of the world. Under the multicultural column, you will put yes, because it is a multicultural item. The second example, Yours Misfits has requested a social emotional competence support kit for infant programs of $465. So the total price of that is $465 because they are not requesting anything else. Teaching and new relationships is a category. The priority again is number 3. The social emotional competence support kit will foster emotional literacy and nurture the social emotional development and emerging play skills of infants. So if you can pick out the what is the social emotional competence, the how, it'll foster emotional literacy and nurture social emotional development. Is this a multicultural item? No.
I do want to address a couple questions quickly. There's a question that asks, can anyone with a 4-year degree be a teacher? The answer to that is no. But, it definitely depends on the degree. But, I mean, aside from that, there are other things that need to be done in order for somebody to be able to be a teacher. And that's something you'd probably want to work with our professional development department on. And then as far as, there's somebody asking if the slides are going to be available to use as a reference. So we will have some of this information. So for example, like examples of the form so that you guys can use as a guide. So yes, we'll be able to, have that available to you. A lot of this will be available on our website, just as a refresher, since, it is a lot of information. And then as far as pricing goes, there's someone that asked if, you would deduct, for example, 20% off of whatever the cost of the item is, since, Kaplan offers 20% off. Yeah, you totally do want to do that. But additionally, sometimes we don't know exactly the cost. And so you're just going to use your best estimate when filling this out and taking a good stab at trying to figure out the cost of your items. So, it's okay if you're off by some dollars. It's your best guess most of the time.
Yeah, and so you can go on Kaplan or Lakeshore and enter in the items, create your cart, and do the total. But what you want to do then is just take the subtotal and then multiply that by 20%. And that'll give you the correct cost. Because if you look at the rest of it, it has taxes, which tax exempt, so we wouldn't count tax, and no shipping. So it'll be really just the subtotal. So just take the subtotal and multiply it by 20%, and that should give you the total. Okay, so do we have any more questions? There's another question. I just bought 3 tablets and a printer for my family daycare a couple months ago. Can you use past expenses under category 5? No. So again, you would need to be awarded first before you can spend the money. So if you've already purchased it, then it's not reimbursable.
Yeah, unfortunately, it'll have to be November 1st and on that you'll want to, so those purchases will be allowable.
Okay. A couple more examples here. So they have requested a crawl and climb caterpillar, $450, and a waterfall climber of $500. Under the price column, you would put the total of the 2 costs, so $950. The category is health and well-being. The priority is priority number 1. And then the goal is how the Caterpillar Waterfall Climber will promote fitness in my program by getting the children outside to run around and be active. So the how would be by getting the children to be active and running around. So that'll support the priority number 1. Is it a multicultural item? No. All right, we have another question. Going back to the question about hiring a Spanish teacher, how do we show an invoice for that? Does the contractor just send an invoice for all future classes and we submit that? Just trying to understand how to do that as a weekly support to my childcare.
Yeah, so what you'll want to do with that is, yes, it's an invoice. So for other folks that have done it in the past, they have invoices that are submitted by the teacher. Having said that, you have to pay for it in order to be reimbursed. So if they're sending invoices for future classes, you'll have to pay ahead of time. So it's fine if the class, let's say you're paying for a full year. So come, December, there's December, January, February, and then it goes through maybe October of next year. That's totally fine. But you'll have to pay for everything beforehand. So you'll have to pay through those October courses or lessons by the time you submit your invoice. And we will need proof of payment. If you're paying via checks, a lot of times with these you're paying with check, and so DHS does require, and so does our auditors, that we show proof of payment. So we'll have to have that. And then another question. So let's see here. Does the money have to be spent by a certain date? The answer is yes. So between November 1st and March 1st, Charlene, I think are the dates. Yep. So everything has to be spent between that time frame. If hiring a contractor for a repair to the home, do you pay them direct with a quote or reimburse us? It's all reimbursement based. So you would have to pay for everything up front, and then we would reimburse that. So yes, everything needs to pay. The only thing we're able to purchase for you would be Kaplan or Lakeshore orders. Anything else you would have to pay out of pocket first and then submit receipts for reimbursement.
Just know that for invoices that contractors give you, if it just says paid, we need to know how it was paid. So what if it's paid by check, we'll need to see a copy of the front and back of that check to show that it was paid. If it's paid by a credit card, then just make sure that it says paid by credit card ending in the number. But just saying paid by itself, we need to know how it was paid.
Yeah, and that's per our auditors. And so, and as far as check goes, you know, right now too, you're able to kind of go on, if you do online banking, a lot of times you'll get an image from your bank that you can just kind of clip and send, and that works just as well, since it's showing that it's, you know, taken out. And then another one is, so the most, sorry here, I'm gonna go up quick. It says the most that can be spent on electronics, example, 2 iPads, is a cap of 500 and just 2 items. Nope. So you can purchase or request. So remember that all this is going to need to be approved by the review committee. Chances are that if you're only purchasing laptops, you're going to be, or iPads, you're going to score fairly low because they are going to look at other things. And if there are programs that are purchasing things that they feel meet the priorities more, so that they'll score those higher. Again, this is completely out of our hands, and so this is the review committee that will make these choices. No, and you're not limited to 2 items either. So the cap would be $500 for iPads.
Yeah.
Yes, each one. So
Mhm.
if you're doing 2, that's, you know, $1,000.
Mhm.
But again,
Yeah.
right, so if you're just requesting that, they'll say, well, I mean, we have iPads and then we have curriculum and other items. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I
But
would
it's
say that.
per
Yep.
item.
Yep.
It's per item.
Yeah, I would say that to be safe, I would just request up to 2, no more than 2
Mm-hmm.
iPads or electronics. Um, and it's $500 each. So, and that's to prevent, because we've had other in the past programs who would request for an $1,100 laptop, you know, and that's just too extravagant. The requirement of what DHS says is that, you know, basic
Mm-hmm.
computer or laptop. And
Yeah.
that's beyond basic if you're getting an $1,100 desktop or iPad. If you're
Yeah. Yep. And so a lot of that, you know, I mean, again, they're state dollars. And so um, what they keep in mind is if somebody from the state were to go to your home and ask you how you spent your dollars, what would you say and how would they react, right? So again, um, it is. So just keeping in mind, these are taxpayer dollars. And so we do ask that anything that you do purchase be as basic as possible, and not having things that really aren't needed when it comes to technology. I mean, by all means, when you're buying curriculum, and these are different things, yeah, you want to have the best, right? You're trying to provide the best care, but when it comes to technology, I think that's where it gets a little trickier, because yes, we would all love, you know, super high tech and things that have all these wonderful things. But if it's not needed, we ask that you stick to what is basic. Um, Again, because, you know, we are, so we're audited frequently. And these are just things that we need to justify. And sometimes, you know, if we can't, then we get flagged. Um, yes, we'll take a quick peek here at the 5 priorities again, and then a question regarding teaching Spanish. So can you use that as an expense, or it needs to be an outside hired person? I do think, so that would be an overhead cost, and so you would have to contract with an outside person for that. Having said that, there are people here interested in hiring somebody that speaks Spanish or contracting with somebody. So, um, you know, there's a chance there. And then I'll go quickly here to the priorities.
And remember, the priorities again will be listed on the application guide and on the wish list form. So, I mean, it's on the last page of the application guide, I should say, but it'll be posted on our website under the grants and financial opportunities page, not the home page. Okay, so the next example we have is the laptop. So this provider, they are requesting for a $500 laptop because that's the most that they can request for, and a printer of $300. The total price of that is $800 for the two. This is under the professionalism category. This fits under the number 5 priority. The laptop looks like to develop myself as a professional by taking online training. And is this a multicultural item? The answer is no. And then at the bottom, you'll see total amount you are requesting for. So that would be, you'd want to add up everything under the price column. And it looks like this provider went over the amount of $2,000. So out of pocket would be $444. Total amount of multicultural items, you just look under your multicultural item column to get the total there. And in this case, it's the $229 from the multicultural clothing set and that other item. Next slide.
I had a quick thought also, just
Okay.
to kind of go back here with the question about teaching the Spanish. You know, you can't use it as an expense, but I do want to mention that if there's curriculum that you're purchasing to teach it, the curriculum in Spanish, right? You could use, so that would count as a multicultural item, or any language. I mean, it doesn't have to be Spanish, just using that as an example. But yes, any other language would count. So if you're buying, you know, curriculum to teach Spanish and it's specific to that, then yeah, you could count that as a multicultural item.
Yeah, really, I mean, it's anything that would promote and ignite conversation with the kids about other parts of the world other than their own, other cultures, other parts of the world. So, okay.
And then somebody's asking if they could request, you know, instead of, let's say they're purchasing an iPad, can they just request $100 go toward that? So partial reimbursement, and the answer to that is yes. If you have iPads, so service, so no, unfortunately, if something needs to be serviced, you can't. So these dollars are to be used on anything new and unused. So sometimes we do have folks that want to purchase refurbished iPads, and unfortunately that's considered used. So it would have to be new, completely new. And yeah, so
if your
and
if your iPad needs repairs, that would not
it wouldn't
be reimbursable. No, if you want to repair, if it broke down or something was wrong with it, the grant will not pay for that repair. Okay, so going back, so after you've completed the wish list, which is found in your application guide, then you'll want to come back to the application, number 12. This is where you would then input your priorities, right? So this is where you would copy and paste the goal column, because you've pretty much entered in how it would support the priorities. So, so the priority, there will be a list with tying to the number of the priority. So what you'll want to do is make sure that the priority coincides with the priority that's listed. So here I added, you'd want to go back to your wish list, go to the goal column, copy the goal column, and paste it into the appropriate priority. So if we were to go back to one of the priorities, you'd want to copy and paste, say, there were 2 that fell under priority number 3. So you would copy and paste what you had entered in under the column goal in that priority number 3. And so on. But here, the instructions here only shows 3 priorities. The state is in the process of updating the instructions or the application online. So by the time September 1st rolls around, there should be 5 priorities. So don't let that throw you off. So just know that there will be 5 priorities instead of 3 in a state priority. So again, just copy and paste according to the priority number. So Jackie, if you want to go back to there we go. So go down one more. Yep. So you'd want to come back to here. All right. So priority number 3, column number 3, you just want to copy and paste this whole area here, and then go back to the priorities page and just paste it where it says priority number 3. And then can you go down one more, Jackie? Okay. And then like for this one, this is priority number 1. Just copy and paste here the how and paste it to priority number 1 on that page. Same thing with this one. This is priority number 5. Just highlight, copy, and then paste it to priority number 5 on that priorities page. Okay.
Okay, quick question here. You know, do we have to spend in each of the priorities? The answer to that is no. But I will bring it back to the review committee. So the more you can, you know, hit on here, the higher your application will most likely score. And then the state priority. So we don't have that yet. Or they're working on updating all of that. And so, correct, Charlene?
So the priorities will be the 5 because the state has identified these priorities this year. So those are the 5 priorities. There is not a specific state priority to my understanding. These are the 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
Yeah.
right. So this is it. These are the ones, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, so so then this top portion, oh, you want to go back where it says purpose for requesting this grant. This is a summary. So if you can recall on the paper application, there's a grant summary. This is where your grant summary would be. So my suggestion to you is to look over all of the priorities, the 5 priorities or how many priorities you had copied and paste over, and just do a summary of what you had entered in. Make sure you mention at least 2 to 3 items that you are requesting for, and then just summarize it. And that would be your request. Okay, so that's the participation tab. Now this step 13, this is where you will be entering your expenditures or your items. So you'll want to, there's an expenditures button here to add, and this is where you'll be entering in, you'll be referring back to your wish list, and it would be your items column. So you can just copy and paste the items, each item into each expenditure item. So for example, like the first example that we had, you would copy and paste the items under the items column for the first expenditure. And there's a description field. So if you want to scroll down, Jackie, or I'm not, okay. So after you hit the expenditures page, expenditures button, it'll bring you to this. So this is where you'll enter your category. So you'll look at your first line on your wish list, okay? So your category, look under the category column for that first entry. And I believe the first one we had was, it was the requirements because it was multicultural. So the requirements was the last one, I believe. Under indicator, you would not need to, all you have to do is just select other because this is primarily for parent aware. So then you'll want to other down at the bottom there, select other for all of your entries. Yeah, so under type, you'll either select, there's a drop-down button, you'll either select materials or training professional development. Most times it'll be materials unless you're requesting for training under the professionalism category. So most times you'll select materials. For the goal, again, you just want to copy and paste. There's a goal field. You'll just want to copy and paste from the goal column from your wish list into the field. The description of purchase, that would be your under your items column on your wish list. And you'll just copy and paste that in the description field. And there's the example, just like how it was entered on the wish list with the item, with the dollar amount for each item. The total cost of purchase for each item would be, say, for example, the first item was, can we go back up, Jackie? To the wish list. Yep, so for the total cost, so for example, you'd copy this into the description field right under the items column. The total cost to you would be $229. So you would enter, you'd go under the price column and put in the dollar amount under the price column, because that's how much it costs total. That's the total cost. So amount requested is the total amount, and the cost to you is if you're requesting for the full amount and you want the grant to pay for the full amount, then it would be 0 for cost to program, because you're having the grant pay for it. Now, if you're having the grant pay for partial, and you are going to pay for partial, so anything out of pocket, that's where you would enter cost to the program. Does that make sense? So again,
we can go back to, yeah, sorry. I was going to say we can go back to like the iPad. You know, if your iPad costs $300 and you're asking to be reimbursed for $100, you would put, then, you know, $200 would be the cost to the program.
Yep, because you only want $100 for the grant to cover, right? For that example. So really, if you think about cost to program, it's whatever you are going to pay out of pocket. And then population served, you'll put a check mark next to the age group that it serves. So next slide, Jackie.
I do want to ease your any concerns you may have. I know it's a lot of information. And it may not totally make sense now, but it'll make more sense once you're actually in the process of applying. And so if you're a little overwhelmed right now, it's okay, it's normal. And hopefully it'll be, you know, it'll, like I said, make more sense as you're actually going through the process of applying.
So last year I had posted a checklist for the paper application. I will probably have the same thing for this for you to use as a tool to be able to remember what to enter in. So that'll be posted on the website, so look for that. And hopefully that'll help as well. So, okay, so this is so the description of the types of things that you would enter, this is the actual page. So again, the category, you pull from your wish list under the category, the 5 categories. Indicator will always be other. Type will always, most of the time, be materials, unless you're requesting for training, then you'd select training. This is where I said where the goal field is, that this is where you would copy and paste from your goal column on your wish list into this field. And then the description of purchase, you would go under your item column on the wish list and copy and paste that into this box.
We have a couple questions here. So one is, will there be early bird prizes again this year? Unfortunately, no. I know that's one of the sad things for us this year, is that we did not have funds available to purchase any early bird prizes. So sadly, no. We're hoping to be able to do this again next year, since we're not able to do it this year. But no. Yeah, and then if your grant expense comes to $1,400, you still have to have 10% for multicultural. Yes, you do. So it doesn't matter whether you're asking for $500 or if you're asking for the full $2,000, you always need to include 10% multicultural. So if you're $1,400, you'd have to have $140 minimum going towards any multicultural items. So yes, please be sure you're including that when you're applying.
Yep, so it's either the total award of 2,000 or 2,000 for family childcare, or total spent. So say if you don't spend the full 2,000, then like with Madeline with the $1,400, say you only spend $1,400, then it's $140. Otherwise, if you spend the full 2,000 that you were awarded, then it's 200. So it's total spent or total award. And like I said, if you just enter that in, so if you enter that first on your wish list, then you'll have it done and you won't forget to include that into your request. So I would recommend doing that. Next slide. Okay, so here's the total cost. So again, the total cost would again be under the price column. That's where you would put the dollar amount. Amount requested. So if you are having the grant pay for the full amount of the item, then you would put that same amount. And then cost to program would be 0 if you are having the grant pay for the full amount. Cost to program, I think it auto populates depending on what you put in the total cost and the amount requested. It does. So, so if you, this is where if you, your total cost was, say you are almost at 2,000 and you are at on your last request. And you have $100 to spend and your last item cost $50 more. So the total cost would be 150. Amount requested would be 100 because that's all the grant can cover. And then on the cost to program, it'll automatically show $50 would be your cost out of pocket. At the bottom there where it says population served, that is where you will check the age group that the item would support. And then cultural inclusion, that is the multicultural. So if the item is a multicultural, then you would click in that box.
Yep, so there's a question here. It says, how does multicultural work with home repair? Is that included? Or would we need to purchase a separate item? It would be a separate item, so it has to be specifically. So let's say you're just using $2,000 for, you know, to help repair your deck. You are only going to be able to spend $1,800 on that deck, and you would have to use $200 of that award to purchase multicultural items. So you cannot use the entire amount on just any repairs that you have. You do have to purchase items that
count
towards that.
So it's not in addition to your award. So your award is $2,000, right? If you're a family child care provider. So $2,000 is not 2,000 and then some for the multicultural. It's part of that 10% of your award. The only time it's 10% of what you spend is if you spend less than your award. So if you spend less than 2,000, then it's 10% of the total spent. Otherwise, if you're spending the full 2,000 of your award, then it's $200 that you would need to show. And like Jackie said, the remaining would be the other stuff that you are requesting for.
And there's another question. It says, it seems that we're putting each request in at least 3 times throughout the application process. Is there a reason that one entry can't populate into other areas or not ask the same information? So there are a couple different things here. So you will just put it one time. It's just, so we're using, for example, this is not part of the application. This is something to help you with it. So what we found last year was that when people completed the wish list, which is something you'll be typing into or handwriting into, you can also, just write your thoughts on there. It makes it a lot easier as you're going to online to complete these portions. It makes it a lot faster. Otherwise, it can take you quite a bit of time to do it if you're doing it on the go. But yeah, you do not need to complete the wish list. It's just a tool for you to use. Once you enter the information, it'll be fine. So you're only entering it once.
So,
But yeah.
yep. So my recommendation is to, if when you're doing your wish list, I would have just 5, because you have your teaching and relationships category, right? So enter in the items that you are requesting for under each category. So you should have a teaching and relationships category with all of the items that you're requesting for that category. And then the second entry would be, if you have something from the health and well-being, enter under the items column everything that you are requesting for that items under that category. So that when you go back to the application online, you'll just have 5 entries, one for teaching for each category, if that makes sense. So, and again, you don't have to use all 5 categories, but I would try and lump everything in each category so that you're only entering it 5 times if you are using all 5 spending categories. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a
Hopefully.
question about, would wallpaper be reimbursable? Since, it's easier to clean, it just makes more sense. I think that is actually something that would fit in building quality or parent aware. So that would be reimbursable under that grant. Like Charlene mentioned, when you're making repairs and stuff to your program, they need to be, it's something that is required by licensing for any repairs and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's a little trickier. So this grant's a little more strict, but there is more flexibility with any building quality and parent aware dollars. That is something that you'd work with your coach on. But yeah, it totally makes sense, right? Like if it's easier to maintain, especially, I mean, now, yes, it makes sense, but for this grant being as strict as it is, it won't be reimbursed.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get your licensor say, hey, you know what, this is a requirement that your program needs is a new wallpaper, and they can justify it in their letter of recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
It's your licensor that's saying that. So if they can provide documentation saying that, yeah, this provider needs a wallpaper for this and this reason, then we'll accept it because it is considered a minor renovation. But again, it needs to be flagged by licensing as a requirement. So if they can provide something to us and it falls under one of the priorities, under one of the 5 priorities, then you can request for it. Definitely.
Yep, and this honestly, truth be told, is a little tricky because we have programs that are actually trying to prevent from getting flagged, right? So they don't want to get flagged, so they're trying to be proactive and fixing things. But we do need that letter from licensing, and so for some of our programs, it's hard. I mean, they're like, well, I don't want to get flagged, that's why I want to fix it. But the grant requires that it be a necessity for any repairs. And so that's, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, if you haven't been flagged for something, you probably don't want to get flagged. So yeah, so it's something you gotta, I mean, if you've been flagged for it and you're gonna fix it, that's one thing, right? Like you want to just fix it that way. But if you haven't been flagged and we're saying, well, the grant requires a letter from licensing, and then you may not want your licensor to come out and be like, oh yeah, this is a problem. Here's, we're flagging you for it. So, it is a choice you'll have to make, unfortunately. But yeah, so we do know that there are programs that are concerned in that sense. So.
Okay. doesn't look like there are any more questions, so we'll continue on. Where were we? Okay, I think we did that. Okay, next. Okay, I think we're done with that page. Okay, and then here, after you, like I said, click on the appropriate age group, and if it's a multicultural, you'd click on that box, on this box. If you are finished, you'd click Save and Close. If you have another action item or expenditure, then you would click Save and add another. So in our example with I think there were 5 or 4. Then in our example, we would click Save and add another, and then go on to the next line. So to save yourself again from making too many entries, I would lump everything into each category, and then just put the number on the wish list that that goal pertains to. And then, yeah, copy and paste the, because you only have one priority under each spending category. So
Yes, and that's a really good point, Charlene. So, you know, we have programs that think that they have to do a separate entry for each item. You don't have to do that. You would lump them in. So all of your health and safety items would be under one entry. All of your teaching and relationships would be under one entry. And so you would just list those items. But yes, you don't have to do one for an iPad and then another one for, you know, each training that you have. So you just lump it right in. So at most, you'll have maybe 5 or 6 entries if you're getting all of your categories, right? If you're getting something from all of the categories. But if you're only using 2 or 3, then you only have 2 or 3 of those categories. There is a question asking if replacing rotting wood and railing for the deck needs something from licensing. The answer is yes. We do, because it is a renovation, or sorry, oh my God, it's slipping. But yes, now we do have licensors that will, you know, give you a letter and say, yeah, I'm recommending that it be replaced, even if they don't flag you because you're not there yet. But it's tough because we have licensors that they're like, nope, I'm not going to give a letter unless it needs to be flagged and whatnot. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do in that regard.
So if the kids spend a lot of time on the deck, and you have rotting wood and that's and the wood's peeling off of the deck, this would be maybe an example of an emergency grant that you can apply for. So again, we would need a letter of recommendation from your licensor stating that this directly impacts the kids' health and safety, which, you know, if you're spending a lot of time on the deck and you have little ones crawling around or, you know, walking, and there's a chance that they would put the piece of wood or whatever, the little thing that comes off, into their mouth, and the licensor says, yep, that would directly impact, then that's a grant that you would want to look into. So with the emergency grant, you can apply for that and the child care services grant. It's the startup grant that you can't apply in the same year with this grant. Okay, next slide. Okay, so after you add the expenditures, the page will be updated with your entries. Check to make sure. Oh, check to make sure that you have met the grant requirements, which is the 10% multicultural. Here it says 25% match. Ignore that. That's no longer applicable for centers. And so here is just really checking your work, checking everything is correct. If you want to go back, you can go back, click on details to see information about your expenditure. So down here, if you want to verify what you've entered in. And then click to review application entries. So that's the previous button. So you can go back and look at everything that you've entered in. And if everything looks good, you can click continue here. You can click next in the bottom right.
Okay, a couple questions. There's a question about the daycare bathroom having a pedestal sink. Would an inexpensive sink with a cabinet be okay? It would be safer, sturdier. I don't think it covers, the grant covers this. That's probably something I can, if it comes down to it and you end up applying, or if you want to just kind of email us directly, we can ask DHS if that's allowable. I'm thinking no.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you want to know for sure, we can ask DHS and see what they say. So they'll have to look probably a little bit closer at the statute. And then another one is having wood playground, it may need upkeep soon. Since the playground equipment is 100% kid related, as opposed to a deck, would I need a letter from licensor? Yes or no?
Yes.
I don't know. Honestly, that's a great question.
So what do you mean by playground?
Yeah, can you unmute yourself and then ask or clarify a little bit? Because yeah, I think it depends.
Hi, so it's like a rainbow playground,
Okay.
and just it's getting older, and so I was thinking when you were saying before, we could buy a board or two to replace certain things, and then if it's professionally installed, we have to pay the labor to install it, but we could go ahead and buy the material, submit the material for reimbursement.
Well, yeah, we've had programs apply and request for a rainbow playground before, and that was approved. But again, you would have to, if you're able to work it into the priorities, one of the 5 priorities, which I think it does with the health and fitness one, under the health and well-being, yeah, certainly you can request for it.
Yes.
So would you recommend that I get a letter from my licensor too saying?
No, you don't need a letter of.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, not in that case. No, you wouldn't need one. And then is labor paid for with grant if approved or materials only? Yeah, labor is reimbursable as long as it is done by a licensed and bonded contractor. So that would be something you'd have to ask prior to hiring somebody to do labor. They have to be licensed and bonded, and that is in statute, unfortunately. So there's no way around that. It's part of the law with this grant, and it's because of liability. It's a whole liability thing, and the state is not wanting to be held responsible. And so, yes. So the answer is yes, as long as the person is licensed and bonded. And then someone saying, I have timbers surrounding the playground equipment and sand, more slivers and separation due to age. It is used only for childcare programs. Yeah. So again, with, any playground stuff, you're good. I think that's it for now. So.
Okay, and I just want also to add with the labor paid piece, just make sure when they complete their invoice form that they itemize out the cost and material and labor, and make sure that they do it on company led, and you can have them included in the invoice their license number and that they're bonded. And that would be proof for us because it'll be on letterhead or their company letterhead. Okay, so next page, next slide. This last one is the participation agreement. So if you recall on the paper application, there's a series of questions that you had to answer and initial. This is the same. So you'll have to read each point and what the what is included and what your responsibility is as the grantee. And then put a check mark in that box there and hit submit. It says here, once you click submit, your application will be submitted to Child Care Aware and you cannot change it. So before you hit that submit button, I would recommend clicking on the previous and go through your application one last time before submitting it. Next page. Okay, so once you hit submit, it'll bring you back to this page. So here is where you will find the case status. It'll say that you've applied. If you see something else other than that, then something did not go right, because it should say applied, that you've applied. And then when the grant committee comes in to review it, then they'll change the status to in review status. But the case status should say applied. It says below there, once your grant has been approved, an action item will be automatically created that reminds you to complete 12 hours of training before you can be reimbursed for items you have purchased, or before items can be purchased for you. So after the grant committee has reviewed the application and you've been notified that you are awarded, there will be an action item to remind you of the 12 hours. And so you'll have to go into that action item and mark it as complete, I believe.
There is a question that asks, with limited amount of grant funds, is it first come, first serve for acceptance? So anybody can apply, and there is no limit, right? So it's not first come, first serve. What will happen is once the application closes, all applications will be reviewed by 3 review committee members, and they will score your application. And then the awards are highest gets awarded first, and then we go down the line. So yep. Yeah, it'll all depend on how high you score. So yeah, it just, you know, that's how it goes. And then if there's some sort of tie, then it would be down to, you know, depending on who submitted first in that sense, if there's a tie. But yeah, it's not necessarily, so no, the answer is it's scored and then they go from there. Having said that, you know, we do have a wait list. So if you're not awarded right away, we do have a wait list. And there are, you know, every year we do have programs that get awarded and then decide not to spend it or for whatever reason. Maybe they had 1,000, they asked for 2,000, only spent 1,000. So if we have funds remaining, you know, we'll go down that waiting list and then award in that order.
Yep, yeah. And I also want to add that the wait list, just make sure that your training requirement is complete, because we will, once we go down that wait list, well, that's the first thing that we'll ask for is your training requirement complete? And if it's not, we'll go on to the next person on the wait list, because that is still a requirement. I don't believe that it will be an issue. 12 hours is pretty obtainable, since you have like I said, January 1st through February 15th to complete the 12 hours. So we'll know probably by the middle of March to the end of March if there is funding available. Like Jackie said, some programs, because they didn't spend all of their money, or they weren't able to get their training done. Say it was a challenge for them to get 12 hours in. So, you know, then they weren't able to, they were not eligible to be reimbursed. So that money came back. So yeah, at that point, we will have a better knowledge of how much money we have left to be able to go down that wait list. But just make sure that your required training is done if you happen to be on the wait list. Next slide. Let's see, the grant administrator will indicate how the money will be distributed. You will need to upload receipts or shipment cards for reimbursement, depending on who will be purchasing your items. On your dashboard, scroll down to your regional case. So you'll want to scroll down to regional. If some of you are in parent aware, you'll have parent aware, but you'll want to look for regional fiscal year. And then you'll want to click on the action item so you want to check on click on the action item of where you want to upload your receipt or your cart or your shopping cart. So here the example is this action item here. So you click on that, and the next slide, it'll bring you to this page, and you'll see the Documents tab. Okay, so if you have a receipt to upload, you'll click on this plus Files to upload your receipt. So you want to save your receipt on your desktop or in one of your personal folders. Click on Files, find your receipt from your folder, and then just upload it, and it'll upload. And then save. Click Save. As you exit the screen, you're reminded to click Save and Close. Once you hit Save and Close, it'll bring you back to the quality dashboard with the list of grants that you have participated in, or is participating in, I should say. Okay, so tips to score high on applications. I just a few tips to help you to remember. First, you want to complete the wish list, which is found in the grant application guide. Again, this is to help organize your thoughts on paper. You want to be specific with the dollar amount in parentheses, and make sure the items are approved. So refer to the application guide on pages 4 through 8. Complete the purpose for requesting this grant last on the priorities page. So remember, on that priorities page, I said to copy and paste from the goal column on your wish list to the corresponding priorities number, and then do the top, which is the purpose for requesting this grant, which is basically the summary last. And that's just to summarize everything that you've entered for the priorities into that field. So again, here it says copy and paste the goal column from the wish list to the appropriate priority on the priorities page in the participation tab. Next slide. And then again, this talks about the purpose for requesting the grant. Summarize your thoughts from all 5 priorities. Mention at least 2 to 3 items and restate how those items will support the priorities. And then you want to make it short, concise, and to the point. Sometimes short is better than long-winded because you're going to lose the reader. So you want to be short, concise, and to the point. Next page. Okay, so these are the deadlines for the grant. September 1st is when the application will be available online. You have until September 20th to submit your application online. If you want the paper application, then you'll have to request it. Drop it off in the white mailbox in front of the building, or email it in. November 1st is when the award letter will be emailed. It will not be mailed. It'll be emailed. The award and denial letters will be emailed by that date. February 15th is when all the required trainings must be completed. Oh, it should say 2021. That's a typo. So February 15, 2021, and then March 1st, 2021, all receipts and required documentation is due. Next slide. Okay. The different ways to submit your application. So we want you to apply online. So there's the website, developtoolamn.org paper application, again, is by request only because we want everyone programs to apply online unless, again, if you have, if you're not good with technology and you struggle with it, or you don't have access to a computer. You can drop it off. There's the mailing address to drop it off in the white mailbox outside the building. And there is my contact information, my phone number. I prefer not to fax, but if you really need to fax, you can. But preference, if you're doing a paper application, is to email it or drop it off. Does anybody have any questions? This is the end of the presentation. I'm so happy that all of you could make it and join in. Just a reminder that everything, this will be posted on Think Small's website. It's not going to be on the home page. It's going to be on the Grants and Financial Opportunities page. It's kind of hidden from the home page. So when you click on professionals or providers or something like that at the top, on the left, there's a Building for a Better Business tab. You click on that and you'll find the Grants and Financial Opportunities page within that. Okay, so that's where we will post the recording of this information session, as well as the application guide and other tools that will help you. So I will have the reimbursement checklist if you were awarded, but for now I will have the application submission checklist just to help you and guide you through the application process. So use the instructions from DHS as well as that as well as the checklist as a tool. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me, call me. You can contact Jackie as well. Does anybody have any questions? Tamara?
Looks like everybody's okay right now. We're just getting thank yous, and really we want to thank you all for joining. We know, it's a Saturday, and we've all probably had really long weeks as well. So, but thank you very much for joining. We were a little nervous. We didn't know how this was going to go just because it's the first time we're doing it virtually. But yeah, I mean, we're happy to help however we can. If you have any friends or people that you know that did not or were not able to attend the session, you can let them know that it will be available online, so on our website for viewing. And, will the guidelines be available before September 1st? We hope so, but we don't know, Karen. That's the truth. So we're kind of waiting on DHS, unfortunately, for that. So, but, as soon as these things are available, we're going to go ahead and post them. And yeah, so, and then DHS will have stuff on the Develop website as well. So hopefully, it will be available. We do know, we were hoping that everything would be done by now. So this is kind of, we waited to have the session until later in August in hopes that everything would be squared away on DHS's end and that we could share the latest information, but that did not happen. And so, yeah, so we were sorry about that, but yeah, we're waiting on them to iron out a few things. But yeah, and so that's it for us. But again, thank you for joining and have a great rest of your weekend.
Yes, thank you for joining. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.